Jalen Hurts is the new model for dual threat developmental quarterbacks, and we're going to tell you why.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? It's your boy, Damian Parson. Welcome to the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Again, I'm Damian Parson, national scout with the Draft Network, with my guy. Come on, talk to him, bro.
What's up? What's up? This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst for the Draft Network, man, and 2019 national champion. Yes, I said national champion. Here to bring you some championship perspective on the NFL draft and everything football with my guy, DP Damian Parsons.
Listen, man, you got to flex him. You got to flex him a little bit, Keith. I love it. I love it. But this episode of Locked On Draft is brought to you and sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not a self-help. It's a professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/locked-on.
Here we go. So DP, we have a couple topics that straight off of the dome, and we have to get into. Obviously, every weekend in the NFL, there's something going on, and it directly correlates with the NFL draft. So first, we have the Colts finally making a head coaching hire, hiring Steve Steichen from the Philadelphia Eagles, right? A guy that we've seen directly work with Jalen Hurts. So does that mean that the Colts are now going to go after a dual threat quarterback? But first, let's start with Jalen Hurts, man. Is he paving the way for dual threat quarterbacks with his performance in the Super Bowl?
Keith, I mean, the performance that he's put on in the Super Bowl, man. We came in with this young man coming into the league was not the most purest of passers. He wasn't really polished, right? But you knew he was a hard worker. He's a coach's son. He had everything else you needed, right? We've heard the terms that talent gets you drafted, character and work ethic keeps you in the league, and he has that, right? Being behind Carson Wentz, his first year in the league, and dealing with that situation, now taking over this team, and not just taking it over, Keith, but getting Nick Sirianni and like Shane Steichen, who you just talked about, the OC, having those guys come in and embrace him and really doing what they need to do. Shout out to Howie Roseman, Keith, the GM, doing what he had to. Man, listen, we talk about it all the time. And you know my slogan, quarterbacks are dependent on what's around them, right? We've seen it with Mahomes against Tampa Bay a couple years ago in the Super Bowl when the old line wasn't holding up and the weapons and receivers weren't doing their jobs. It made his job that much harder, right? And they ended up losing that game. So just seeing how he came out and he played in the Super Bowl, making plays with his legs and with his arms, Keith, I think he is paving the way. Because I'm going to ask you, Keith, what name do you always hear invoke every time we talk about developmental dual threat quarterbacks? What's the one name everyone throws out?
It's always Josh Allen, right? And DP, if you don't mind, I want to pick it up from here because if you'd have told anyone in this season, right, that Jalen Hurts would be in the Super Bowl and being able to win the Super Bowl, right? Everyone, and not Josh Allen, I think everyone would have said you're crazy, right? But you talk about developmental pieces, you talk about a good offensive line, you talk about wide receivers, you talk about a defense that he could depend on, and then like you said, man, it's all about the structure. Nick Sirianni came over and he said, you know what, Jalen Hurts, we're going to highlight what you do best. So watching the beginning of the Super Bowl, what did you see? You seen that they got Jalen Hurts involved with his legs, right? Even when he had the turnover, which I'm pretty sure he's wondering how the hell did he do that? Guess what? The first play called was another QB counter, QB run designed to get Jalen Hurts back comfortable. So if you ask me, does Jalen Hurts' performance pave the way for these quarterbacks, for these dual threat quarterbacks? I have to say yes. And listen, in the past, we've seen dual threat quarterbacks come in, right? We're talking about Cam Newton and Colin Kaepernick, but both of those performances, especially Cam Newton's performance, was very lackluster, right? So I think everybody still had a pessimistic viewpoint and perspective to it. And then Colin Kaepernick, that entire offense wasn't playing well until the lights cut off for some reason. Who knows why the lights shut off in the Superdome, right? And then they made a comeback. But I think this is the first performance that we've seen from pretty much wire to wire, Jalen Hurts dominated this game, and it was showcasing his legs. It wasn't staying in the pocket. It was like, Jalen Hurts, you're 6'2", 225 pounds. Go make some things happen. And you're seeing that not only is he making things happen with his legs, but his legs are the difference in this performance right now in this Super Bowl. So I have to say that, DP, if you ask me, I think it's definitely paving the way for these dual threat quarterbacks in these upcoming drafts.
No, 100%, Keith. And you just think about it, right? And the dual threat quarterbacks that we're talking about in this class is Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, right? These 6'3", 6'4", 230, 40-pound athletes at the quarterback position that can do everything that we're seeing Jalen Hurts be able to do, right? So you think about the power run game, right? The QB power, QB counter, the QB veers, the zone read, right? All those different things, Keith, that we've seen Jalen Hurts not just doing the Super Bowl, but he's done his entire career, even going back to high school, right? So people wondered, okay, will that translate, right? I remember reading that he thought that some people thought, and I think he said himself, he wasn't sure that he was even going to go to the Senior Bowl as a quarterback. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of how the position and how his value was looked at when it came up to his development. But this young man played for Nick Saban. Then he went to Lincoln Riley. I think going to Lincoln Riley was so big for him, getting in a more pass-happy offense, that air raid, spreading things out, and it's really helped him, right? So you look at Anthony Richardson, you look at Will Levis, and you say to yourself, well, it's a copycat league, Keith. How can teams copy the model that the Eagles have pretty much structured around Jalen Hurts?
I think you have to commit to it at the end of the day. And that's what you've seen the Eagles do, right? All the way from the owner to Howie Roseman to, the head coach. They committed to what Jalen Hurts does best. They made the trade for A.J. Brown. They had Devontae Smith. The offensive line, they made sure that it was good. And then they gave him a stable of running backs. So I think, DP, at the end of the day, you have to commit to it, and then you have to implement it. And let's give Jalen Hurts credit, right? Because the storyline matters with Jalen Hurts. He had every opportunity to turn around and quit once he was benched for Tua, right? Like, that was one of the highlight moments probably in college football history. Tua coming, in the second half and then throwing a game-winning touchdown. But why it was such highlighted, you got to think Jalen Hurts is sitting on the sideline with somewhat of the opposite feeling, right? And he has to pull himself together and get it together. So I think it's going to force talent evaluators, and we're talking about this upcoming NFL draft, it's going to force talent evaluators to dig deeper, because they can no longer sell us NFL fans on, oh, he's a running quarterback, you can't with him. That won't happen anymore. But DP, we have another topic coming up.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. When you're at your best, you can do great things, amazing things, outstanding things, like dunk the highest goal or climb the tallest mountain and reach the top. But life can't get you bogged down. Life can overwhelm you and just take the wind out of your sails. But working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of yourself. Because when you feel empowered, you are more prepared to take on everything that life is willing to throw your way. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, I encourage you to consider BetterHelp, because it's a great option. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. So, Keith, you talked about having another topic, and we're going to kind of continue the discussion that we were just having, right? Because having Jalen Hurts, like you talked about Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen as the OC, well, Ian Rappaport and I believe it was Adam Schefter tweeted out and reported earlier today that the Colts have allowed, they pretty much let everybody know, listen, man, this is done. Jeff Saturday, thank you for your services, but this is finished, right? We have our eyes set on a different option at head coach, and that is Eagles OC Shane Steichen. So having that set up the way that they did, right? Now this kind of opens up, because we all know for the past couple of weeks, what have we been doing? We've been kind of just wondering where they're going to go with the quarterbacks. Keith, when they had Frank Reich, they went what? Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, only Phillip Rivers was the true success out of all those older quarterbacks. Even though Carson Wentz is not up to the age that those other two were. You know what I mean? He just plays like it, I guess. But but the fact of the matter is, now they are in a situation. They got the 4th pick in the draft, Keith, which means this is a team in prime position to get a franchise type of talent at the quarterback position. Does this hire of Shane Steichen, does it open the door for them getting a dual threat quarterback?
Yes. And so this is the NFL draft show, right? So I'll talk about my NFL mock and my philosophy rolling forward with this. Up until this point, I never drafted or in my mock put a quarterback to the Colts, right? Because I said as long as Jeff Saturday is there, I think they're just going to press repeat on this, and they'll, the Colts may possibly tank again. And so that way they can have another high pick, and then they could get into Caleb Williams and Drake May sweepstake, right? But after this move, hiring a young offensive mind, you have to think that they're going after a quarterback and sitting at number 4, right? I think it's a very interesting position. And reason being is this. You won't be able to have the pick of the litter, right? You won't have the number 1 pick to where you can pick whoever you want. But the Colts are still in a good position because if there's 2, maybe 3 quarterbacks that you like, you don't have to give up any draft capital in the future to move up, and you can just select them. And I think that's what opened the door back to this Jalen Hurts and this Anthony Richardson conversation is this, that Jalen Hurts comp to Anthony Richardson or even Will Levis. Let's open it up to Will Levis. Also, when you're talking about a developmental toolsy quarterback, I think it gives the Colts a little bit more comfortability in saying that, hey, Eichen has done this already, so we can take one of these quarterbacks. We don't necessarily have to move up for Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. We can take one of the developmental guys at 4, and we believe that our head coach can get it done.
Nah, and that's where I'm looking at it too, right, Keith? Because with Shane Steichen coming over from the Eagles, he's been under Nick Sirianni, Nick Sirianni was the one of the coaches on Frank Reich's staff with the Colts, right? So it's like everything kind of tying together for the Colts. And you look at it like you talk about with Will Levis, another guy who's big, physical, big arm. He has that straight line athleticism, right? A workout warrior of sorts, similar to the Jalen Hurts. And then you look at Anthony Richardson being that like from that side, that height weight type situation. The speed difference between him and Levis is evident, right? Because he's a more hyper active athlete, right? Has the elusiveness in the pocket and everything like that. And just looking at it, man, I'm like, man, this is a situation for me, Keith, where Steichen, I think he should stay true to what has given him the success, right? You had front row seats and a big hand in helping Jalen Hurts get to where he is right now, right? Like you said in the previous segment, embracing. I think that's the key word, Keith, because every time these dual threat quarterbacks come into the league, we always talk about, all right, they got to go to the right situation. The coaches have to embrace it, right? And you know, I always talk about stop trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. You know, if that quarterback doesn't fit that timing and rhythm offense, but he's more of a vertical passer, right? Then don't put him in a timing and rhythm offense. Put him in a vertical one. And I think that's where Shane Steichen coming over, you look at the weapons that they have in Indy, right? Like they got a lot of big athletic guys.
The same exact thing, yeah.
Like they got some big athletic guys. And what's happening with Shane Steichen? Shout out to Howie Roseman saying, let's go get AJ Brown. You know, this first round pick, forget this pick. You know, here you go, Tennessee. You go do it. You use this pick. We're gonna go and we're gonna invest this pick into an already solidified star receiver, Keith, and AJ Brown. And not only that, but they going in the previous draft, drafting Devonta Smith top 13, right? So now you got essentially 2 number 1 receivers, and you have Dallas Goedert, and like you talked about earlier, having the run game. Well, Indy has 2 tight ends right now, Mo Alley Cox, and they have Jelani Woods, right? They have Michael Pittman. And is it Alec
Pierce?
Pierce. I want to make sure I said the last name right. Alec Pierce. And then you think about having Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, right? So you got all those same kind of structures there. They got to figure out the offensive line, but that's also another reason, Keith, to get a dual threat mobile quarterback, because that's going to help the offensive line that's going to take some of their worries away about, hey, Matt Ryan can't move. And it gives them some anxiety because they're sitting there like, okay, if I get beat, if I don't pick up this twist and this stunt, Keith, our quarterback's dead to rights. But when you have a Will Levis or Anthony Richardson back there, especially those two big body athletic guys, what's your? I love the phrase that you coined months ago. Type of guys that can make wrong things right, and these are the type of quarterbacks that can do that, Keith.
Yo, I agree. So I know the Colts fans, man, whenever we drop a mock draft, they get real angry when you put Will Levis or Anthony Richardson to them in the past, right? But I think tonight they should be a little bit more optimistic because we have to be honest about where everybody was with Jalen Hurts, even when he was drafted, right? It was, did the Eagles need to do this? Is he ever going to beat out Carson Wentz? And I'll be honest, I faced that guy when I was at LSU, right? 2019. That was the Justin Jefferson, the not one, not two, not three, not four touchdowns, and we blew Oklahoma out. And I was standing on the sideline like, man, that was a pretty lackluster performance from Jalen Hurts. But let's go back to our main point in that it's what things are surrounded by a quarterback, right? That Oklahoma team was not ready to beat us in the trenches. They did not have the defensive backs to match up with LSU. So, of course, Jalen Hurts didn't look that good. So that comparing now to the Colts, right, and what Anthony Richardson or Will Levis can do in that type of offense, I think there are some pieces for a dual threat quarterback. And we know that with these big quarterbacks, they usually say what? They usually miss high, right? That's why you have, like you talked about, your Alec Pierce, your Michael Pittman, your Jelani Woods, your Mo Alley Cox. And then you can run the football. You get some more offensive linemen up front. And then now you can make them comfortable with any type of play action type situation. So for me, where the Colts, I was really questionable about them taking a quarterback, I can now be convinced a little bit more heading into the NFL draft because of watching what Jalen Hurts has done as far as from a development perspective. And when a coach decides to embrace the talents that you have and instead of trying to highlight the things that you can't do and try to make you do it. So, man, I think I'm all in on this. I'm all in for trying to figure this thing out moving forward, right, with the dual threat quarterbacks. And I think that as talent evaluators, we have to have a much more open mind to the quarterback position and not just try to place everything upon their shoulders, expecting that, hey, that it's as simple as, do you have a good quarterback or not? It's a lot more complex than that. And speaking of complex, man, we're going to have another complex discussion.
The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get no sweat first bet up to $1,000 as bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. And you can do and bet on different things in the NBA, especially this week. You have the Los Angeles Lakers heading into Portland to face Damian Lillard and the Blazers are favored by 2.5 points. You can not only just spreads, but you have money lines, player props. I'm talking player points, rebounds, assists, and you can do exclusive bets like 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes. You can do all those different things with FanDuel. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same-game parlays. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Hey, Keith, last but not least, let's get into this final segment, man. And I'm going to be honest with you, bro. Like, you said something that was very profound. We've basically, this is a quarterback discussion. This is a quarterback fluid episode, right? And you talked about how the Colts fans have been like worried if they open up a mock up until this point and seeing Will Levis or Anthony Richardson to their team, right?
Well, you know what? Let's do this, DP. Let's stop picking on Colts fans because it's
all of them. It's all of them.
It's all of it's Panthers fans. It's everybody picking at the top. So let's go ahead and loop everybody into this conversation.
100%.
And I know you're about to set the table, but I'm going to set the table for you. For these players who, they have the tools, but it didn't necessarily pan out, and why there's reason for optimism moving forward with these type of quarterbacks.
No, and Keith, I'm going to bring up a name that we both we met him last year at the draft, and we liked his game, and we liked his potential ceiling in like Malik Willis, right? And it's always like the last impression when it comes down to certain things in life and in this business. So a lot of fans look at like, oh man, Anthony Richardson, Malik Willis again, right? Like, oh, Will Levis, Jake Locker, or, just whatever, like the worst possible comps to throw out there to be like, I don't want no parts of this guy. But guys, we're here to tell you, don't be upset if your team drafts one of these guys. right? Because Keith, I can tell you, I watched the tape on Will Levis, and then I cheated and watched tape on Anthony Richardson too. Like before we got the cross checks, you know what I'm saying? But you did the deep dive, the deep dive on Anthony Richardson, and I can say both of these guys have paths to success, and they have the tools. What I call, they have the truck traits. And if you've never heard the term, it's about being either a truck or a trailer. And when I say that, Keith, you know what it means, but I'm explaining to the family, to our listeners here. When you're a truck, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, those guys have the physical tools to say, hey, you know what? If it's a rainy, soggy day in the country and it's mud and I got some stuff I'm trying to haul, I can't haul it on the Fiat, man, on the Fiat, however you pronounce that little car's name. I can't haul it on that. I can't connect that wagon and all that stuff with all those moving. We're moving and stuff. I can't put the furniture on something and drag it with a Fiat. I need something that can handle it and pull it along, right? But those quarterbacks have those truck traits. I need that F-150, that Ford 250, all those big physical vehicles, right, with four-wheel drive and all that. I need that, Keith. And Will Levis and Anthony Richardson has those things. So it's like you look at what they can do for your offense. You can use them in the run game early. The same way we talked about with Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni with Jalen Hurts, right? Even going back to Cam Newton in Carolina, you use the run game to get the quarterback comfortable and get them into a rhythm and really set the defense and make them honest. Keith, what's the phrase we like to use? Quarterbacks like Will Levis and Anthony Richardson have the ability to make defenses play 11 on 11. You can't just play man coverage, two high safeties, and forget about either one of those guys. Ask Utah versus Anthony Richardson week 1 of the 2022 college football season, Keith. He rattled off a 60-yarder for a touchdown. They forgot he was back there, right? Because he was playing from the pocket. So that's kind of where it is, guys. Don't be afraid of these. Be afraid of drafting these dudes.
No, I agree with you, and I'm gonna go back again to system, right? Like, and it matters, and we see it time and time again in the way the NFL is changing. So let's talk about NFL draft in perspective of where the NFL is now. And now we're starting to see what these in-depth, complex run schemes, right? Like they're starting to come back. Like the NFL offensive coordinators are starting to understand 20 yards or 20 yards, right? You don't have to get the 20 yards passing the football, man. If you have a light box and you can draw up to where it's a one-on-one where you have a dynamic quarterback on a linebacker and that's a mismatch, then go for it, right? Like a big play is a big play. Explosive play is an explosive play. And we shifted the pendulum so far left towards the passing game. And I think now it's slowly starting to come back to the middle to where it's like, okay, we want it to be balanced, but then now you're throwing in these mobile quarterbacks. So a guy like Anthony Richardson, just to speak about him, right? A powerful runner. Like I think he's more similar. He's somewhere in between Jalen Hurts and Cam Newton, right? Like in between that running style. I'm not saying he's exactly one of those quarterbacks. I'm saying that's his running style, right? So when you think about like 3rd and 3s, right? You're talking about strictly quarterback power. And if you pick up that first down, guess what? Who gives a damn how it's picked up? We're all happy, right? It's 1st and 10. The players are happy, the coaches are happy, the fans are happy. So let's move the chain. So I think it's more about being open-minded to how we can play the game of football, because for so long we've been told that football has to be played from the pocket, but now we're moving the pocket, right? We're moving the launch point. We're doing more bootlegs. We're doing quarterback. We're doing shovel passes. We're doing all type of things, and it's fun and exciting. And the NFL fans are starting to like it. So I think when we, like you said, you get these, quote unquote trucks, right? These guys with the 4x4, the 7Z1s, or however the hell you want to call them, and you get them on the field, and then you say, you know what? Let's put you in advantageous situations. And to tie it back, because we are, getting close to wrapping this up, to tie it back to the Jalen Hurts conversation, they allow him to do things that he's good at. Throwing the deep ball, right? Go ahead and launch it. Drop back, launch it 60 yards. Give your big-time wide receivers a chance. Okay, cool. Then you know what? The short game, you can do the short game. Now, what they don't do is, I don't see a lot him standing in the pocket and having to work all the intermediate parts of the field, right? No, let's not do that if you don't do it well, because majority of these quarterbacks have a deficiency, right? At the end of the day, and when you realize that some quarterbacks' deficiency of this, that the pass rushers know exactly where you are. But for Jalen Hurts, for these other dual threat quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, they seem to make plays out of nothing, because when a free rusher comes, they can still make a play and then find a wide receiver down the field. So I think this conversation, right, and moving forward, because Super Bowl is over, right? So we're heading into the NFL draft. The conversation needs to be, okay, what can we do with this guy, and where can he get drafted, and how can we supplement different things around him for him to possibly be successful?
No, 100%, man. And like we talked about in the last segment, if you missed it, with the Colts and Shane Steichen, we're not saying you completely rule out, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, but what we're saying is you don't have to move up if you don't want to, right? Like, they don't have to take that step and, hey, I got to get to one. I got to trade multiple picks for, excuse me, for the first overall pick. If you want an Anthony Richardson, you can wait at 4, right? And you can build your offense around him, and potentially if Will Levis
DP,
fell
can
as
you?
well. I mean,
We're saying it with
the combines in a couple weeks, right? We're a couple weeks away from Indianapolis, right? As we're talking about them. Now, if he goes out there and does what we've heard that he could do in terms of testing, Keith, maybe not. Maybe you won't. Maybe you won't be able to wait at 4, and maybe you may have to move up. But as of right now, you may be okay if you're the Colts fans, or you're someone around that 4 or 5 range. But like you said, man, at the end of the day, for me, I want a quarterback that I could attach everything to, and really allow them to help lead this team in the run game. So, listen, guys, we appreciate everybody tapping in with us. It's our first episode together as the new host of this podcast. Again, you can find me on Twitter at DP_NFL, and my guy Keith Sanchez at The Talent Code as well. Give us a like, man. Give us a like, subscribe to this podcast. You can find out all of your favorite podcasting networks. And of course, for YouTube, subscribe, download everything, do all of it, man, because we have so much more to come. So, guys, as always, listen, I'm Damian Parsons, Keith Sanchez with the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. We out, guys.
Peace.